Thank you again, Mikey, for coming on today. For those who aren't familiar, I am Hunter, the community manager over here at Arbitrum. Peter is pretty much managing partnerships here as well and mainly focusing on DeFi. I don't know, Peter, you can kind of shed more light on that if you want. I think that was a pretty good introduction. And Mikey is coming all the way from Curate DAO, who just launched on Arbitrum just the other day. And we're pretty much just going to be kind of going back and forth here today with Mikey, asking specific questions. If you have any questions for their team, feel free to drop them in the AMA chat above, as I mentioned earlier. But Mikey, if you don't mind, maybe like we can kind of just jump into it. Are you able to share like a little bit about your background? Maybe kind of how you got into crypto and what kind of brought you to Curate DAO?
Yeah, definitely. So before I started Curate DAO, I finished my PhD. I was at Stanford, studying computer science. I was working on like a natural language, trying to use natural language and other modalities to program. So the idea is like in the future, it would be nice if you didn't have to learn how to program in order to program. And what if you could just like tell the computer or use different modalities like to tell the computer what you want, and then it would compile what you wanted to do into using AI into code, or it would compile the code into like a graphical user interface. So basically like looking at new ways to use like AI to generate code instead of using like a programming language or a drag and drop editor to compile code. And after I finished the PhD, I was just looking into new types. I was really interested in like sort of the intersection between like the legal system and like technology, and seeing like a future where instead of like where it would be like a community governed legal system. And I wanted to figure out ways in which you could use like prediction markets and staking and distributed governance to manage varying things. And I sort of came across the idea that like a database would be like a really cool thing to manage in a community way. And what I mean by that is like, if you look at any website from like 1,000 feet up, it's basically like a database. So if you look at Facebook, it's basically like a database with terms of service and some sort of monetization around it. And who decides what the terms of service are and who decides how those rules are adjudicated is typically done by like one person. But I wanted to see like, what if you had a database and you took like a DAO, you looked at it through like the lens of a DAO? How would that look like? And what we came up with was you would have a DAO, and then every time someone added data to this database DAO, they would become a partial owner of it. And then when the database generated revenue, whether that be through advertisements or through subscriptions or through referral generated fees, that money that was generated by the DAO would be split up by the people that contributed data to the DAO, the database DAO. And then the next question that comes along is, okay, so like who gets to be a part of this DAO? And we came up with like a new, typically that's done, by the person that started the database, and that's like a centralized authority. But we wanted to give like more autonomy to that concept. So we sort of came up with this concept of like a DAO manages the database, where the DAO is sort of like a black box that could either be a person or a group of people, and they determine the types of content that are accepted or rejected into the database. And the reason you want to get accepted into the database is because once your row is accepted into the database, you get access to the monetization that comes from it. So it was really came from this idea of like, how do you create like a decentralized database that like incentivizes people to create good content, and how do you then manage that content as well? And we wanted to partner with Arbitrum because like we're putting every transaction, anytime you write into the database, it's like an on-chain event, and we needed something that was very performant and able to enable that. So Arbitrum seemed like a good fit.
I think that was a really good overview of what Curate DAO is, and that leads to my next question, which is, what are some differences between Curate DAO and like ecosystem pages that people use today? Like, for example, we have the Arbitrum One portal where it showcases a lot of the teams that are on there, but how do you see Curate DAO being different than that?
Yeah, good question. So with like the Arbitrum portal, it's kind of very similar to like the Apple App Store or um, the Google Play Store, where it's kind of like this like curated set of things that are allowed in that store. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. But I also see a world in which like there isn't just one viewpoint around the type of content that is accepted into the store. So, for example, you can imagine a world in which there are hundreds of different app stores. One might be like more for DeFi things, or one might be audited contracts, or one might be contracts or applications with really good user interface and user experience. And each store would be like a curated set of applications that it's by like a trusted person. So we wouldn't have this problem around like one person trying to only one store existing, which I think creates a lot of problems when there's just sort of a monopoly on like access. And there'd be multiple different points of view. And the other thing that's a little bit different is like the incentive. So what's the incentive for somebody to like how do you grow that app store? It's like people have to submit it, but what if you could rely on the community and we could pay the people who found really good apps? So in Curate DAO, we have this concept of the curator is who's the person who curates the applications and does the final accepting or rejecting. And we also have this concept of the scout. And the scout is the person that finds the row, which in this case would be the application, and they contribute it to the database. And then when the database is successful, they earn a percentage. So one of the things that's slightly different with existing ecosystem pages is like it doesn't incentivize the people that did the work to find the data. And I think why this is important is if we can pay, and we also pay the curator. So anyone who does useful work to the database gets a percentage of the revenue that the database generates. And the reason I think this is really important is I think when you pay people, you just get a much higher quality of data. So you can imagine like Uber enabled this new economy of people who probably wouldn't drive their car around for people around in a car for free. But when you paid them like a fair wage, you get this ecosystem of drivers. And I see like a very similar thing happening with like data curation. Like if we pay people what it's worth, you'll get like a much higher quality of data, and you could incentivize, like you could imagine like a new class of category of work where it's like a paid data curator, and they're like someone has like a part-time job, or someone is like in between jobs and maybe they have like free time and they just want to like contribute some data, and then if that data is of high quality, then they get paid for it.
No, I think this is like a really good point because as Arbitrum has grown over time, we've had, more and more teams that, Hunter and Nina and others have been adding to the Arbitrum One portal, and we've been doing a good job in trying to sort those teams alphabetically. But a common problem we have is when people ask us, what are the best DeFi teams, or what are the coolest like NFT projects? We try to be an agnostic platform, and we try to be helpful towards all teams, so we don't try to like necessarily point people in the right direction. But like this Curate DAO really helps to solve that by helping to curate and create these lists that are actually useful, where the community can see which projects others find that are valuable, and these lists are dynamic, so they can change over time. So I find it to be really compelling.
Yeah, I think this thing works best for like perpetually changing data sets. So like applications are going to go offline, or you're going to keep adding new things, and at some point like you just need to like distribute the workload to other people, because it's going to be sort of too much to manage. And that's where it really comes in handy to have like a team of people who are incentivized to help along with curating the data and sort of break it up. I mean, I could imagine there would be like an Arbitrum store for games, an Arbitrum store for games for kids, an Arbitrum store for DeFi protocols in certain countries, an Arbitrum store. Like there would just be like many different like subcategories that would just kind of be like too much for one person to manage. And someone who really has like a lot of domain expertise could be like the leader. Like there might be like a Spanish speaking applications on Arbitrum, and that's just sort of outside the domain of the people that can currently manage it. So you can sort of grow the ecosystem by like finding more niche categories that people with domain expertise can curate.
So like, would this technically like more or less be kind of just a thing where it's like mainly like kind of front end facing for users who are like looking for these kind of like kind of what Peter was saying, like the best of like specific categories, or is this also something where it's like 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 that can get like really technical like if need be, where it's like maybe you're not curating dApps, maybe you're curating like I don't know like APIs that certain dApps have that you plug into if you're certain dev or something. Like if I want to make like a dex aggregator and I want to find out like where all the different APIs are for these different projects on Arbitrum, for example. Like can it get like can you go that technical in there? And generally, is this like something that like regular people can like do themselves, or do you need to kind of like have something set up there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we can curate apps, but we can also curate like it's very similar to a database. So anything that is like of data type, any that is a piece of data, we can store and curate. So we're kind of data agnostic, and what we end up curating most of the time is like pointers to other things. So when someone curates an app, what they do is they take the URL for that application and paste it into our UI, which then interacts with the smart contract. But it doesn't just have to be sort of an application. One of the things that we're looking into doing is like curating sets of like common security vulnerabilities. So someone would like submit a proof of concept of a common Solidity problem that often occurs, and then like check that into GitHub, and then that they take that URL to that proof of concept, and then submit it to a Solidity vulnerability curated set. And so in that way, we could get very technical. We can also thinking about doing like whitelist and blacklist for wallets. So if there's like a known scam wallet, it would be really nice if you could like keep an actively curated set of addresses that you shouldn't interact with, and maybe like automatically import that into like MetaMask or something. So that like, okay, I trust this curator who's curating this data set, and if they say this address is a scam or is trying to like steal an NFT or an ETH, then we could automatically like deny that transaction. So like we can do anything from like anything that has a reference to a URL, or it's like an answer to your question, like anything that is a pointer or sort of a raw thing. It doesn't just have to be at the user level. It can be pretty much any type of data, in the same way you could store any type of data in a database. And then what is accepted or rejected from the database relies on the domain expertise of the curator and the scouts who are contributing to the database.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this leads to another question, which is like, can you share for the audience a bit more on how does Curate DAO actually work? Like if we kind of walk through the steps of how to get involved as a curator, and then also like how do you guys prevent against one of these curators trying to manipulate the content per se?
Yeah, definitely. So let's take an example of where you wanted to create like a distributed Yelp, and you wanted to create, in order to create a distributed Yelp, you would need to know, you'd have to start with every restaurant in, say, New York City. So you would set up a curated set for that would, your rules for accepting into the curated set is a restaurant must be currently open and it must be located in New York City. And so you'd then be the curator of that set, and you'd sort of put out a call to action to other people in the community for them to contribute links to restaurants. And so if I was a contributor, then I would find a link to a restaurant and I would submit it into the data set. And it costs like 1 token to submit your data into the data set. And if your data is accepted, then you get your token back. But if someone contests your data, so someone can say like this piece of data, this restaurant is actually located in New Jersey, or this restaurant is closed, and someone can then double or nothing you, and they bet 2 tokens to remove you from the data set. And if they're right, they get your 1 token. Now, someone else can come along and say, actually, that person that voted you out for 2 tokens is incorrect. This restaurant actually is located in New York. And so then they vote you in for 4 tokens. So it keeps going from 1 token to get it in, then 2 tokens to boot it out, and then 4 tokens to push it back in. And it can keep going back and forth up until it reaches a threshold of, say, 7 tokens. And then once it crosses that threshold, if it never crosses the threshold and no one takes the other side of the bet, then what happens is it defaults to the person that last betted as being the correct person. But if it does reach so in that case, it would default to the last person. If it crosses the threshold, though, it goes to the curator, and the curator looks at it as sort of the oracle of the database, and they say, okay, they verify it, and their reputation is on the line. So if every decision that the curator makes is written to the blockchain, which is immutable, and someone could go back and audit that to see if they're making bad decisions. But we'll come back to that in a second. So they look at the piece of data that's been submitted, and they look to see if it's a restaurant that's open and if it's in New York. And then they say, okay, this is here. I'm gonna take the tokens away from the person that voted to put these out, all the people that voted no on this, and reward those tokens to the person that voted yes, and the people that voted yes. And the curator takes a small cut, and all the other tokens are given to the winner of that prediction. And why would someone risk 1 token in order to get it in the database? Because if they do, then anytime the curated data set generates revenue when someone searches it and an ad is displayed next to it, that revenue is then generated, that revenue is then given back to the people that actively submitted data into the data set. And now, what if the curator goes rogue? So the curator has a best friend, and that best friend keeps just submitting restaurants that are located in California, and then other people could flag it. So the curator starts accepting restaurants that are located in California. However, all those restaurants that they've accepted yes that are located in California, all those decisions are written on chain. So there's a public log of all decisions that the curator makes. And then who watches the curator is sort of the question. Who watches the watcher? And then anyone can then audit that curator's decision process. And that audit can be done through manual inspection, but we're also developing an AI using GPT-3 that automatically detects, that tries to auto flag curations that they look are anomalous, and then a human can go in and inspect that. So if the AI or a human detects that the curator has become corrupt and is accepting bad things into it, the reputation of that curator has been reduced, and people shouldn't use that data set anymore because it's been flagged. It has like a low score, and the score can be determined by us, or it could be determined by an external auditing system.
Very cool. I think what I got from that is that there's spam resistance with tokens, and so people just can't submit like endless amounts of data without having something at stake. And then there's also like another system where somebody helps to watch the watcher, as you say, or watch the curator who's actually submitting the content in the system. And this is what creates a robust system for you guys.
Yeah, we have various checks and balances. It's very much designed after like the 3 branches of government, like the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, how each is sort of checking. We want to have the curator like making decisions, and them being audited by the scouts and the viewers who are viewing it. And if at any one point one becomes corrupt, for that curation should like die and go away and become like, people should know not to trust it. So it's kind of like, each curation has like a bit of a brand associated with it, or each curator has a bit of a brand associated with it. And if like Nike starts making really bad shoes, their brand will be tarnished and people won't buy them anymore. So you can sort of like, the idea is like, if you make it very clear when a curation has gone rogue, then that will incentivize curations to stay honest, and if they don't, to warn people to go away from them.
It's a very interesting system, also because it's like, in a way, if you think about it, it's kind of how like fraud proofs on rollups work. like especially Arbitrum, like interactive fraud proofs. So like you kind of put a bond or a stake or what have you, to pretty much say, hey, this is what the state is here, and then we're going to go ahead and post it on Ethereum, and then people have the ability to challenge it by putting up their own stake. But if what they do is invalid, then they can lose it. So it's kind of like, in a way, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the system works as intended, that really shouldn't happen technically, right? Because no one should want to lose knowingly, like one token, for example.
Exactly. Like, you're not going, if someone submits a restaurant that is in New Jersey, and if someone submits a restaurant that is in New York, and then they bet against it, it's going to be very clear that they're going to lose their money, because someone is going to take, I'm going to take the others. If I believe that the curator is honest, then I'm going to take the second side of that bet and then just like get 2 tokens from that other person. I might be the person that submitted it, or I might be another person out there. But it's always like, you're always trying to design the like crypto economic game incentive here to get the right behavior. So yeah, exactly. Like if someone decides to bet against something that should be in the database, they should lose their money if the system works properly. So it's very similar to Arbitrum, how like, no, I'm not going to bet against it, because if I do and I'm wrong, then I just like lose out. So yes, it's very similar.
Right, where it's like, like there's just so much incentive to not do it. It just wouldn't make any sense.
I think where it gets interesting is where you get into gray areas. So Arbitrum is very clear, like you're executing code. Now, if I say like mint chip is the best ice cream flavor, it becomes harder to determine if mint chip is in fact the best ice cream flavor.
That's obvious. Who eats mint chip? You know what I mean?
So what will happen is you'll get like different groups forming around different instances of truth. So you'll get like certain contingents that believe one thing and certain contingents that believe the other thing. And it'll be interesting to see, how these different truths, you can imagine like a CNN thing where like one group believes one thing, and then like also like a Fox News thing where one group, and seeing how these two systems, work out, and what are the sort of the second and third order effects of that. But what's interesting about this system, which I really like, is the objective of which how content is curated is very clear. So the type of content, like if you are in the mint chip group, that mint chip is the best. Or if you're in the CNN group, it's a left-leaning group. And if you're in the Fox group, it's in a Fox News group, it's in a right-leaning group. So at least you're clear on which group you're part of, and you're like, the biases of how data is curated makes sense. And I think this is sort of similar to like a food label. On when you eat food, you can see how much fat and sodium and calories are in it. So you can still choose to consume different types of news or different types of food, but at least you're clear on the trade-offs that you're making, and you have some objectivity in before you consume that piece of data or food, which differs from how things exist today, where you go to a news site, you're not really quite sure what the objective is. If I had to make a guess, I think the objective is like to get you to click on news so that you view ads. But here you have like a sort of a different objective, which you're able to articulate.
Right, and like again, like the cool part is that it's it's ground level to the point where it's like you as a user can not only benefit from being able to kind of just scroll through all the different curated lists and find out what's the best in each category, but you can also participate in the curation of it, which kind of, I mean, we kind of spoke about it a little bit already, like just so it's like more black and white for people, like as a user, you know, like technically, like what are like the different avenues that a user can take to actually get involved within Curate DAO.
Yeah, definitely check us out on our website, curatedao.xyz. So CURATEDAO.xyz, and check out our Twitter, curate_DAO. But there's like concrete things. Is like today we're very excited to launch our like app store with Arbitrum. So if you know of a good app, you can go to our website and you can go to the curations tab and then go to curated Web3 apps, and you can either curate a set. So if you have like an idea of like a new curated set of data that you want to be the curator of, you can create a curation. And to do that, you go to curations and then start a curation. So curations at the top bar, and then do start a curation, and then it like basically what you do, if you just want to play around with it and you don't want to spend, you can either create it on mainnet or testnet. We have contracts on both, but you basically put in the name of your curation. So like say you want to do like NFT games on Arbitrum, and then you like you articulate the description of the curation. So you say like games that are currently live that have a docs team, or games that allow you to earn money or something like that. And then you set up the database schema. So you see like right now it just sort of defaults to URL. So that means you just paste in a URL of the game, but you could also do other things like title, Twitter handle, whatever you want. And then we have some various parameters on the side, like how long the crowd has to add data. So you can add data, the crowd, different, it's a little details, it's not super important. And so then you can mint a curation, and then, or you could choose to participate in a already existing curated set of Web3 apps. So we have like tokenless Arbitrum protocols, Arbitrum NFT collections, Arbitrum games, NFT marketplaces, or Arbitrum dApps. And you can, if you happen to know of an existing app out there, you can submit it to one of the existing categories. And also we have these working on both, as I mentioned before, is if you just want to play around with it, I think it's fun to like kick the tires without having to like spend actual money. You can play with it on the Arbitrum Nitro testnet, or if you actually want to play in real life, you can also play around with it on the Arbitrum mainnet as well.
No, that's awesome. I mean, you know, we have a lot of people in the Discord community. Like, it looks like there's 500 people that are listening to this right now. So I think, you know, these folks in the community know even better than, you know, sometimes like AJ, you know, Hunter and I, about what, you know, what are the great projects that are in Arbitrum today. So, you know, we definitely would recommend you guys to participate. Also, a question that I have personally is Curate DAO always going to be available just on the Curate DAO website, or do you see this as being a product that you could integrate into other websites?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question. The way I see this happening is right now we're building kind of the first version of it. The core thing of what Curate DAO is the smart contract, which we're interacting with using our Curate DAO React website. But like long term, I see the smart contract as being sort of the core part of it. And so we have in our white paper, we have the docs and stuff on how other people can interact with Curate DAO. And then eventually we're going to release, you know, various front ends. So you could display the content that is in that smart contract in a really easy way, or we'll have like a self-hosted React thing where you could display, kind of like how Wix works, where you could display different types of content in different ways. So say you wanted to have like a carousel or a slider or display certain values, you could do that. But definitely I see this as being like very open, and if you wanted to build on it, you could just like use the Rails that exist as our database in a similar way you'd use like Mongo or Postgres. You'd sort of just like click to install and call this. And then you could we've done a lot with our caching and stuff. So even though it's on Arbitrum and it's very performant, we do some read write stuff so that you can read using a cached version. And I think we'll make that open and available as well. So it makes it sort of almost like building like a CRUD website, a create, read, update, destroy website. And then why you would want to do that is then you don't have to rewrite sort of the Postgres, the database side, and you can then use the Rails and start earning, because the person who builds the website is the curator, and the curator gets a percentage that they set of the fees that are generated using the Postgres, using the sort of database that we created. So long term, I seeing us being somewhere between like Postgres and like Wix, and developers can choose where along. We would offer a variety of services, and developers or users or curators can choose where they're most comfortable.
And I guess, like, kind of coming from like a background where it's like, I don't know, whenever I look at a project or company or whatever it is, I'm always thinking about like, like, oh shit, like, they could do this and this with it. Like in my head, I kind of like see this also as similar to kind of like what Lens is, where it's like they're kind of the social infrastructure and people can just build front ends on top of it and pull whatever data they need. I can almost like pretty much see this as like literally like similar, where it's like you have this like very valuable, or frankly even different types of valuable lists that are curated by a trusted community, that different companies or whatever can literally kind of just like build on top, right? And you have that thing in the corner where it's like it's almost like a white label product where you can just say like curated by the people, etc. So that's something cool, but it would be really really awesome to see like like I would even say Web2 companies even picking this up as well, because like curation is not an easy thing, especially if you're kind of starting from like ground zero, which is why a lot of people use like for example like a Google Maps or like an Apple Maps, for example, in their own app, because they can't go sending out cars or like like reviewing restaurants on their own, right? Because it's going to take way too much time, so they just pull from another one. So
Yeah,
I think Curate
exactly.
down in a way is like that. It's a lot of potential, frankly, there.
Yeah, it provides sort of the infrastructure which you build on. Yeah, I think the Google Maps example is like very appropriate. Like, you're a restaurant, you don't want to have to like back, they would say like, oh, go on this major highway, turn left, turn right. Or an individual restaurant isn't gonna like need to curate it. So it acts as like a service. And then, I think in the future we'll have these sort of like distributed curated sets that you then import into it. Exactly like what you said. Like you'll have like a list of like things, and then you just sort of put an iframe on your website, and it'll say like curated by this person. And then every time you view, like you might have to pay a little bit of money. The restaurant might have to pay a little money to iframe something, but then all the money that's generated by that restaurant or that payment goes back to the people that actually curated the data. So that's kind of the hope, is that like, okay, so someone puts in like this street, let's say we were built a distributed like Google Maps somehow, that would be pretty hard, but just imagine. And then someone put in that like this is Main Street here, and then every time that Main Street is viewed, they get a percentage pro rata of how often it occurs. And so you have this very cool like economic incentive for people to fill out a data set, and then for them to be directly rewarded. Like, whereas if you compare it to like how crowdsourcing and data curation works, is the person who actually did the work gets very little of the actual ownership, besides like the 1 penny they were paid on like Mechanical Turk or something.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what would be nice to know as well is like what you guys kind of envision for Curate DAO. I mean, you kind of spoke a little bit on it, but I guess more specifically, maybe like like a roadmap, like what's being released today, what's coming out in the next couple of weeks, months.
Yeah,
just
so
more of an idea there.
we're focusing on like this, like we launched the smart contract, we launched the UI, and now we're sort of going after this vertical of trying to make one vertical work around this like Web3 applications. Next up, we're going to do like Web3 jobs, so like a curated set of Web3 jobs, and then we might do this like white label blacklist for like addresses. But then after that, this is just to beta test it more so than anything else so that we can work out any resolving things, get user feedback. And then we're going to be opening up the smart contract up to external developers, kind of like what we talked about before, like earlier, and then have the whole ecosystem launch. And we're trying to accomplish these things pretty quickly over the next couple of months. So we're building through the bear market and just like continuing to provide actual value to people, like providing rewards to people that contribute useful data, which I think is a really important thing that we're going to see in the next wave of crypto whenever it happens, is like people working on chain and then getting rewarded with rewarded in some way for the work that they did, as opposed to just like staking tokens with not so much work involved. But here it's really about like thinking through things and then getting rewarded for that.
I think that's awesome. We want to try to move away from some of these speculative type of use cases that have really been super dominant in crypto and move to more like practical ones. And I think that you guys are definitely that. And also I like hearing that you guys are going to be opening up your contracts and going in that direction. Like, for Arbitrum, it's critically important for us to further decentralize, and we're doing that with Nitro and our validators and the sequencer work that we're doing with Chainlink. And so I think you guys are also headed in the right direction.
And we'll probably also open up our like React front end, because there's a ton of code that goes into that, and it's not hard, but it's also not trivial, and we want people to be able to build applications easily. So that will be along the roadmap too, so that people can fork it and customize it and change the color and design and stuff like that, and not have to rewrite all the bindings that interact with the smart contract.
Perfect. That sounds great to me. So I guess we are kind of towards the end of our questions in here, but this could be the time where we get questions from the audience. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I think we could bring you to the stage here and ask Mikey any questions that you have.
See.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, if you want, actually, there was a question or two.
You can type them to you probably.
Oh yeah, in the channel. That's right.
Yes. So in the AMA chat, there was actually one question. I'm sure we pretty much answered already, but we can kind of touch on it real quick. It's more direct. So a combination of what are the benefits of the Curate DAO's partnership with Arbitrum, and how does this benefit normal users, essentially? Kind of combine two questions there.
So the part, say it one more time.
Yeah. So what are the benefits of the partnership with Curate DAO at Arbitrum, and how does that in turn benefit normal users?
The benefit we're adding to the ecosystem, and we are also crowdsourcing the applications that exist out there. So right now, Arbitrum Portal 1 is great, but I think we can even do better by one of the things is it only has applications that have launched and are very official, but we might want to see things that are currently in beta and things that are more experimental, or things that have tighter bounds on the categories. So having a place where people can curate their own applications, I think really benefits the Arbitrum ecosystem. And then how does it benefit the Arbitrum users is, I think we add a lot to the community by having a phone book for applications. And then also for the individual thing is, you can add to the curated set, and if it's accepted, you guys can earn money based on that as well. So we're doing some rewards where you can earn money if the curation is accepted.
I think that's awesome because, a common question that we get is hey, what are some cool upcoming Arbitrum teams? And a lot of the partnership team, we know this because we're talking to all of them, but it would be great to have just a list where people can easily find new teams that are building on Arbitrum, and it's not necessarily on on our backs to help to create this list, and so we're definitely very supportive of efforts like this.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think there's also something to be said for like quote unquote like permissionless things, which is like one of the things that's great about like Web3 is like someone will come along with an app where you like one of the things that's annoying about like the Twitter APIs, you have to like sign up for it and they can accept it or reject it. And it's hard to like it's hard to use it sometimes. And having just like a permissionless app store where someone just can on a whim create a curated set and other people can just on a whim start adding to it. I don't think it'll compete with like the main curated thing, but it'll offer different viewpoints and like be like a precursor and like a offer a different perspective on things.
Oh yeah, no, agreed for sure. It looks like we have a couple of people on the raising their hand here. Let me go ahead and invite Ismail to speak. Ismail, hopefully I said that correctly. There we go. All right, you are on, my friend. Feel free to unmute.
Hello, dear Arbitrum team. Thank you for accepting my request. And my question was, does Arbitrum team have any grant program for the developers? No.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's actually been the number one question we got at like ETH Denver and Permissionless when we were there. So we don't currently have a grants program, but we're in the process of setting one up. And so if you want to get in touch offline, we can talk about that. But essentially, we're helping to curate a list of, ironically curating, a list of teams that are interested in getting grants. And so, happy to work with you on that.
Okay, thanks. I got my answer, and I will be very happy to keep in touch with you and to do some great stuff on Arbitrum network. Thank you.
Yes. Keep building, sir. Thank you for coming on. All right, we have Zarif over here. Let me see if we can kind of get him over here.
Hello.
Zarif.
Hey, how you doing? Daniel here. I had a question for Mikey. I just wanted to ask. I was taking a look at your website, and I noticed you had a curation, best Kanye songs of all time. Now, this is obviously something very subjective, but I see like some songs here are like Ghost Town, Wolves, Spaceship. So I'll click on one of those, and I'll see it's like there's a button that says exclude. Sorry, I joined a little bit late. I don't know if you went over this, but yeah, so basically what I would do now is I would wager some way to exclude this and then other people would vote in. Like, how does it work really? Just
Yeah,
curious.
totally. Yeah, so we have the best Kanye songs. We have some playlists that exist. And obviously like best Kanye songs is subjective slightly. And so in order to get someone starts a curated data set and it costs nothing to do that. But then to add to the curated data set, you have to stake 10 way. And that 10 way is user defined when the curated data set is minted. So when you mint the data set, you have a couple of hyperparameters basically that define the database, and those hyperparameters are then immutable and can never be changed. And the reason you want that is so that you can't basically rug the data set down the road. So you can't change the terms of service once. So what the curation is about, and these hyperparameters can never be changed, and that prevents that's kind of like equivalent to like Facebook or Instagram never being able to change their terms of service, which is super important so that when you sign up for Facebook, you're putting a lot of your time and effort into into your content creation. And if they then change the terms of service that they can ban you for their platform for XYZ reasons, you can't opt out. So here, by keeping it the state immutable, you can never change it. Anyway, in answer to your question, So you in order to submit a song.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think the better question is, what is my incentive to providing this curation? Like either adding to this list or removing from this list?
Oh, so your incentive to add to this list is if your data is accepted into the curation, you then get access to the reward mechanism when the data set is monetized. So maybe the Kanye data set isn't super monetizable. If it were more like owned music by individual people, it would be slightly more monetizable. But for the Kanye thing, maybe every time a track is played, maybe not on Spotify, but on another subscription service, you might get a percentage of the fee that is generated by that play. And so your incentive to add to the curation is to put up that initial money is you then get access to the revenue that is generated as that data set is monetized.
I see. So it would be monetized through Curate DAO, or it would be like who is paying me?
There was anytime people would have to pay. Say we could set up a database so that in order to get access to a data set, you have to pay a small amount of money. And that's kind of like paying for a subscription to Netflix. Like you have to pay a little bit of money in order to get access to their content. Or it could be ad supported. So you could put ads next to the curation. And then every time someone goes to the playlist to view your playlist, the ad monetizes and then gets distributed out to the people that contributed to the database. And so if your data is accepted into the data set, you get your money back. And you staked 10 way and then you got it back. But if your data is rejected, you don't get the 10 way back. And that's because like that is considered spam more or less. So what someone submitted wasn't in line with the terms of service or the purpose of the curation. And so you want to like disincentivize that type of behavior. And the amount of way that someone is, the purpose of this 10 way isn't necessarily to be like a huge penalty. Like in the perfect world, this would be like 20 cents to $1 or something like that. Like you're not supposed to be it's not supposed to really disincentivize someone from posting, but it is supposed to disincentivize spam or content that is not aligned with the purpose of the specific curation.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Yep.
It's kind of like a penny per an email thing. Like there's downsides to that, but then there's also upsides where it prevents spam and other things, and you get it basically back if you read if the email was useful or something. But the flip side is it prevents someone from just adding a bunch of random content to a data set, which doesn't provide value. So if someone wants to just run and spam a data set, they're basically just funding the database for other people, which is like the kind of crypto economic incentive that you actually want.
I love that. That's partially why I love running things on incentives and code rather than just strictly code. It always works out.
Yeah, I think we're pushing this new concept of like DataFi, where it's like data meets like DeFi, but instead of combining DeFi with, quote unquote tokens, which have value for some other purpose, we're binding data to all these other to like incentive models, and you're trading on the value of data as opposed to the speculative value on a token. And data certainly has value. Look at like IP or a patent or trademark or copyright. Like I think it's pretty clear that like that is an important thing.
No, definitely. I think we're done on questions here. Just in case, as we always do, for those in the crowd who want to keep in touch with what's going on at Curate DAO or want to join the effort, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can DM us on Twitter. So it's Curate_DAO. It's also linked from the Arbitrum Twitter, or you can also, there's a contact on our website. So you go to Curate, and then on the upper bar or on the sidebar, if you're on mobile, you can go to community and then contact us. And there's a little web form you can fill out with your name, email, and the message. And, we're always looking for new curators and contributors, or if you have ideas on how we can make the website better, or like anything better, or if you want something, we're open, or if you're thinking about a partnership or whatever, definitely reach out to us, and we'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, Mikey, really appreciate you kind of coming on here today and giving us a rundown about how Curate DAO works and all that. I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing what people end up curating. I want to see that. I want to see how that Kanye list turns out too. Big fan of Kanye myself.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be cool. Like, you have imagine if you were paid money to like curate like a killer Spotify playlist, and then you earned a little bit of residual money every time someone played from it. Like, that's cool. Like, instead of just doing it out of the niceness of your heart, you get some residual back, and that's kind of like the future that we're building towards.
That's awesome. Love everything that you're doing here, Mikey, and excited to see more people participate and create some awesome lists for the Arbitrum ecosystem.
Yeah, and thanks for Arbitrum for being so helpful and onboarding us, and we really like the sequencer. It's really performant. You just click, 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 and it's done. And it's really worked out well. And yeah, and we're running on both mainnet and testnet. So if you just want to play with it without having to put up actual money, that's totally okay as well. We're open to both.
Yes, I love that
I
you're
think it's
running
important to be able to
by
kick
the
the
way.
tires before having to spend the money.
Oh no, for sure. And again, it's cool you're doing it on the Nitro one too. So
Yeah,
I really like that.
and you can get
yeah.
Oh, you can get fake Nitro and the Nitro faucet by tweeting Arbitrum wallet. There's instructions online.
Oh yeah, yeah. The message that it sends is pretty funny too. Actually, because of doing that. I linked the Discord, by the way, Curate DAO Discord, and the Twitter handle in the AMA chat for those of you who want to go ahead and go there. But yeah, that being said, if you did join halfway through, we'll make sure to upload this on YouTube shortly, so you can kind of catch it there if you missed out on a little bit here. But that being said, yeah, Mikey, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and thanks everyone in the audience for coming.
Wow, we have a pretty good crew here, and thank you all for joining. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Mikey. Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks. All right. Bye.